What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have now Invest 98L that is starting to quickly organize and develop. We're going to have to keep very close tabs on it, as this does pose a threat to the Lesser Antilles and Puerto Rico at least, as well as the Dominican Republic and potentially Haiti down the road. So we're going to have to keep very close tabs on this depending on how this thing organizes and develops. So we're going to be mainly paying attention to this area of interest right here, as well as another tropical wave that's coming off the coast of Africa right now that I'm starting to see some red flags with in terms of potential organization and development. That's going to be more of a sideshow kind of thing, as 98L is going to be the main show, at least for the next few days. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. Here is the newest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. Already, we are at 80% chance of formation in the next 7 days. Just 2 days ago, about 48 hours ago, this was tagged as an area of interest. Now we're at an 80% chance of formation. That should tell you just how confident the NHC is that this thing is going to organize and develop. And that is stuff we're going to have to continue to pay attention to, and we'll show you some model runs later down the road about how this system will organize and develop. So here's what we have, Invest 98L. Shower and thunderstorm activity has increased since yesterday in association with a tropical wave located roughly midway between the Cabo Verde Islands and the Lesser Antilles. Gradual development of the system is possible during the next couple of days, while it moves westward to west-northwestward across the central tropical Atlantic. Afterwards, conditions are expected to become more conducive for development, and a tropical depression is likely to form by early to middle part of next week, while the system then moves near or over the Lesser Antilles. The system is forecast to continue to generally west-northwestward and could approach portions of the Greater Antilles by the middle part of next week. 30% chance of formation in the next 48 hours. Matter of fact, we can go ahead and show you just how those 48-hour chances have increased from last night, just to give you an idea of what we're taking a look at. We were at 10% at 8 p.m. yesterday, Eastern Daylight Time, and now we are at 30 at the time of recording this, and it's possible that this thing is going to definitely be higher when this thing gets posted, but yeah, it's quite interesting to see how this thing has been ramping up so fast, and the NHC has been... They don't typically do this kind of stuff where you go from a 20 to 80% in 7 days, and you're seeing the 48-hour chances really ramp up. So that's just telling you that they're quite concerned and quite confident the system is going to develop and potentially impact at least the Antilles and at least Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. So those are the land masses we are paying attention to, and that's kind of why we're uploading this video right here, just to kind of warn people, hey, this thing is coming your way, and this thing could catch you off guard, so that's why we're paying attention to that. Let's go ahead and show you satellite imagery and kind of get a presentation on this right here for Invest 98L. And we can go ahead and we're going to zoom in on this. So overall, what we're seeing with 98L, generally disorganized showers and thunderstorms. But what I am noticing a bit more of, and I can show you the water vapor for this, is I am noticing a bit more rotation, a broad rotation starting to form right there. And there is a little bit of outflow starting to develop, at least on the western side of it over here. So it's definitely starting to get its act together. However, there is some dry air that it's dealing with. It is dealing with a little bit of wind shear, kind of it's sandwiched in between two pockets of high wind shear. So as soon as it moves out of that, which it is expected to in the next 24 to 36 hours, then this thing is likely going to go gangbusters, and this thing's likely going to end up going off right here. I know one of my friends in the comments is saying, Patrick, please don't call this a thing, call this an invest. I'm sorry, it's a force of habit. I'm going to do my best to fix that. But yeah, this is Invest 98L. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to that. It's going to be with us for a while. It's going to eventually not become 98L and become a named storm. It's potentially going to become Ernesto. So yeah, That's what we're paying attention to, and we're also noticing a bit more convection bursting up near the center of circulation, as well as some more on the outer areas of it. Not sure if that's going to be long-lasting or not, but regardless, this system is getting its act together. We're going to have to pay close attention to it. The fact that this thing is already showing signs of development in the central main development region, southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, and just kind of hovering over here is pretty interesting. And the fact that this thing is organizing and developing quickly, 98L that is, it is pretty concerning to say the very least. However, it's my opinion that this thing's probably not going to develop in the next 24 hours at least, primarily because there's still very disorganized showers, convection needs to get its act together. Also, we don't really have a mid-level circulation or a low-level circulation just yet. So as soon as that drills down, that's when we start paying attention to it. And that's something I will definitely keep you updated here with so far. However, with 98L, what we're noticing is, yes, this thing is organizing, but it's going to take its time to do that. But it's my concern and the concern of several people I know that once this thing develops and once this thing enters great conditions, this system could potentially organize very, very quickly. And if that were the case, then 98L would be a bit more than Invest 98L, and we can show you the conditions that this thing will be given as this system moves closer to the Lesser Antilles. Let's start with the water temperatures right here. Sea surface temperatures, we're going to be increasing up to 29 degrees Celsius. Where the system is at right now, it's in an area of about 28 to 29 degrees Celsius. Waters right there. That's about 82 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit for those tuning in from the United States and Puerto Rico. That is a lot of warm water, folks. And what ends up typically happening is this warm water, coupled with the fact that there is so much ocean heat content, and the fact that this stuff is well above average, it's much warmer than average right here. We can go ahead and show you the sea surface temperature anomaly map. The waters across the tropical Atlantic are at least 2 to 3 degrees above average. So that's quite a concerning thing to take a look at. And that's a bit scary to kind of talk about, because what you're seeing with these anomalies right here is you're seeing just kind of the stuff that we've been paying attention to since October of last year, especially in the Caribbean Sea, where no real tropical systems entered the deep Caribbean, and we had Beryl earlier this year, but last year we had none moving in there because of the El Nino and the steering currents being weak enough to keep everything out to sea. And my red flag was the Caribbean's going to really ramp up next year, and Beryl was the first thing to happen. I fully expect that with the current steering currents in place, we're going to see some more tropical systems in the Caribbean Sea, and that's not going to generally be a very good thing, especially considering that that's going to affect potentially tens of millions of people, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to that. But speaking of ocean heat content, this is the OHC map right here. OHC, especially in the Gulf of Mexico, has really been lighting up in the last couple of weeks, especially in the western half of the Gulf, where you have this eddy of 175 plus degree, 175 plus degree plus OHC, or ocean heat content. What that's telling me is there is a lot of warm water over there, and that warm water extends really deep into the ocean. So we can go ahead and actually show you that. Let's go ahead and show you the 26-degree isotherm to show you just how deep it is. It's over 100 meters deep in this eddy right here, and across a lot of these areas in the Western Gulf, you're seeing about this whole huge, this very warm water going down about 50 to 75 meters. So that's essentially what ocean heat content is. It's essentially a measurement of how hot the water is and how deep down it goes. That's the layman's terms explanation of it. If you want a full explanation of it, it'd be a bunch of dynamics, and we'd be here for an hour. But we're not going to do that right now. But back to the system at hand, where this ocean heat content is. Where the system is at, it's in an area of about 60, 70 OHC right now. But as this system moves further, moves closer to the Antilles and moves closer to Puerto Rico, the OHC is going to spike. And what we're going to see is we're going to start seeing ocean heat content values of over 100. That is good for rapid strengthening, folks. And that's not going to be very good for, especially if this thing develops east of the Lesser Antilles, which I think it might do. However, the more likely scenario at this current point is this system's going to develop just east of there, like I'd say 200 miles east of there at this current point, although some models are indicating this could develop near Puerto Rico because of how long this takes to organize. However, what we're noticing right here is we're seeing an area of OHC of over 125, closing in at 150, just east of the Lesser Antilles. If Invest 98L organizes before that OHC spike, considering the amount of wind shear that we have over here, which that's not bad for tropical development. Yeah, there is some wind shear to the north of it that the system's going to have to pay attention to, but that wind shear is expected to start to lift a little bit and allow for the system to kind of breathe and strengthen. And if it can take advantage of the wind shear conditions it's given to it down the road, then Invest 98L could potentially rapidly strengthen once it develops. That's a very big scenario. Granted, that kind of scenario would have to be if this thing organizes east of the Antilles, so we're going to have to pay close attention to that. However, one thing you need to pay attention to is the shear and moisture forecast. And I want to pull that up for you very quickly just to kind of see and kind of scope, okay, what is the wind shear going to be like as the system starts to organize and develop? Because I think that's going to be a very important thing we pay attention to. So here is the shear forecast for you right here. Yes, there is some wind shear to the north of it, and it's kind of sandwiched in between two areas of high wind shear. Here's what we're looking at right here. Yes, the wind shear generally stays northwest of it right here, and that could definitely hamper some development, at least initially, but it's also in an angle where that could help enhance the shear outflow if this shear stays far enough from Invest 98L. Now, things could change, of course. This shear could push further to the north than expected. It could push further to the south and get into the system, and this thing could take longer to organize. However, what we're noticing with that in this regards is that we're starting to see that wind shear kind of form at an angle that some of it becomes outflow, and some of it is still wind shear in that regard. It can kind of register as that as tropical systems start to organize and develop. So we're going to have to pay attention to that as we take a look at this. And then as 98L eventually becomes Ernesto and starts to make a bit of a turn out to sea, you're going to see the wind shear really start to decrease quite a bit. However, what you're also noticing as well as there's quite a bit of strong wind shear to the north of the system. Paying very close attention to that, because that, in my opinion, is what could make the system extra tropical down the road. That's what we're paying attention to, at least for right now. So that's the wind shear forecast. I also want to see what the moisture component is going to be, because yes, if there is some wind shear to the north of it, if it can sustain itself in that moist air, then this thing could actually, take its time and organize pretty quickly. So here's what we have: the moisture component to 98L. Here is the moisture that we have right here. It's going to be in a very big pocket of moist air, and that's what the system is going to ultimately be allowed to develop and breathe eventually as this approaches Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Then you start to see that turn up to the north as this thing starts to move out to sea. So we're going to have to pay attention to that. Depending on the wind shear, there could be a bit of a dry air intrusion early on, and that might hamper development until it gets to the Antilles. However, it is in my opinion that this system 98L is going to form either as it's approaching the Antilles or over the Antilles, and Puerto Rico could potentially see some stuff happen with what 98L could offer. So that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're paying attention to very closely. I want to check the ensemble runs very quickly. The 0Z ensembles, we can go ahead and update the plot. Interestingly, I want to check the 12Z as well, but the interesting thing I am noticing is the 0Z ensembles are wanting this thing to start turning a bit faster than some of the 12Z models were anticipating in terms of 98L, which will soon be Ernesto. I think that's kind of interesting, but regardless, this system will likely become a hurricane. The question is now, when will this develop? Will it develop before it gets to the Lesser Antilles, or will it develop after that at that current point? Okay, this is doing some weird stuff. I'm not gonna torture you through me trying to navigate that, but that's the main question we have at this current point. Will 98L organize and develop before it gets to the Antilles or afterward? And we have a few answers from some models right here. Let's go ahead and show you the forecast, no, not the forecast models, the current storms in terms of Invest 98L. Here's what we have so far. Current location is 11.9 degrees north, 39.3 degrees west. Maximum sustained winds are 20 knots or 23 miles per hour. In general, pressure is 1,010 millibars, which that's pretty interesting as well. We can go ahead and show you the track models right here from the 12Z. Track models generally want this thing to start to organize and develop and impact the Antilles and Puerto Rico before generally moving out to sea and having that turn start. And the reason for that is primarily because you have the Bermuda High starting to collapse and the system starts to move out to sea. And that's kind of reminiscent of what we saw last year. In terms of that. However, one thing you should take into account is the Bermuda High is still getting its act together, and this kind of stuff can happen. And there's also a trough to the north that's going to push this system further to the north and mainly keep this thing out to sea. However, I do expect this thing to potentially strengthen at a very rapid pace, and the intensity models do want this system to get up to hurricane strength, some up to Category 4 strength like the HMON and the HWRF. So that's ultimately stuff we're going to have to keep tabs on and pay attention to, but at least in the next 48 hours, organization and development is gradual, although the majority of models want this thing to be a tropical storm by the time it approaches the Lesser Antilles, so we're going to have to keep very, very close tabs on that, and 48 hours out, what we're seeing is essentially it's still hundreds of miles away from the Lesser Antilles, so really anything could happen in between that time and the time it gets to the Antilles. So overall, it's stuff that we're going to have to continue to keep very close tabs on. And I want to show some operational models, and we kind of alluded to this with the European earlier, but the European operational wants this system to organize very close to Puerto Rico and then move out to sea generally as it approaches Nova Scotia as either a hurricane or an extratropical cyclone, most likely the latter. Here's the GFS run right here. We're going to show you the 0Z GFS because it has the same grid spacing as the Euro. Here's the GFS right here. The GFS wants this thing to move actually a little bit further to the south than the European does, and strengthens up to tropical storm strength as it approaches the Lesser Antilles, and then it moves south of the Dominican Republic, making landfall near Haiti, and then it starts to move north of the Hispaniola near the Bahamas, and then start to move out to sea as this thing starts to kind of just drift out, not really do that much. Although the GFS is kind of being a little funny, especially 300 hours out, so take that last little bit with a grain of salt. Here's the Canadian model to pull up for you right here. The Canadian model continues to be the outlier and wants this thing to just completely avoid land and stay out to sea. And they're really indicating a very weak Bermuda High, with this significantly weaker than the rest of the models are indicating. So that's pretty interesting to pay attention to. NavGem, I want to see if the NavGem is finally showing some signs of development. They actually are. Although the NavGem is kind of has this thing fizzling out until this approaches the Bahamas as a tropical storm. At least they're starting to show signs of development. And lastly, we can go ahead and show you the Icon model. Icon's been pretty interesting to say the very least. Icon wants this thing to slowly organize and develop as it approaches the Antilles, approaches the Leeward Islands, and then Puerto Rico as a tropical storm. Then it starts to move out to sea and strengthen up to a hurricane, and then that's pretty much what we're going to hear with that. But ultimately, the takeaways you should take from this is 98L is organizing, it's breathing, it's starting to grow, but at least for the next 24 hours, it's going to take its time to develop. Things are going to change, of course, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to it. But my main thing I want to take away and let you guys know is take this very seriously. Because we've seen systems like this that once they enter good conditions, they can rapidly strengthen, even though there's a little bit of wind shear to the northwest of it that helps enhance the outflow. But regardless, it's stuff we'll keep tabs here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, and I'll keep you updated. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more people engaged with weather. If you want to come join my Patreon and support the Pat's Path Predictor channel directly, it is the first link in the description down below, so be sure to check that out. And if you want to come hang out with us at Storms United, be sure to join our Discord server. Link to that is right over there. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.